Welcome to PMI Manitoba's podcast series, Keeping It Real, where we talk about real stories, project insights, and community success. Here's our episode 5, entitled Roots and Routes, the Agile Mindset, with our special guest, Arindam Sarkar, Senior Project Manager at Capstone Ridge Group, hosted by our news desk team member, Juliet Guerrero. So let's dive into it.
Welcome to the PMI Manitoba podcast, Keeping It Real. I am Juliet Guerrero. I am part of the new desk team. I am so happy because our guest was my instructor. We met at the classroom. Is a senior project manager with more than 2 decades of experience leading projects in the IT field. Arindam's career started embracing the change and agile mindset until working in non-profit and mentoring. Welcome, Arindam.
Thank you very much, Juliet. Always a pleasure.
Arindam, who are you beyond your resume?
I'm glad you started the question with who am I beyond the resume, because when I look at it, resume just shows one aspect of it, which is I'm the project manager. But I'm also the project magician behind the scenes. Given that I've spent 2 decades in this profession, I can say that I've juggled way more forecast charts and dashboards and tamed stakeholder dragons and survived more scope creep than navigating a haunted house. But beyond the deliverables and dashboards, I'm also a storyteller, a mentor, and a lifelong learner. I believe projects just aren't checkboxes. They are human journeys with tight deadlines and occasional coffee breaks. I'm the kind of leader who brings structure to the chaos, method to the madness, but with a smile and a strategy, right? But that's, I would say, the work aspect of it. Outside work, I'm a husband to an incredibly patient woman and a father of 2 fearless ice sport gladiators. So if I'm not at work, chances are that you'll find me most of the time on the ice rinks cheering and howling for my daughter's ringette game or my son's skating programs. I'm also a curious explorer. I'm a bookworm. I love reading books. I follow tech trends, and I'm a big advocate of STEM education. I've been an adjudicator at the Winnipeg School Science Fair for many years, promoting the Internet of Things, trying to pipe an interest amongst the students. With conflicting priorities, I have stepped out for a couple of years, but I tend to go back there again. So in a sense, I'm in part a project manager, in part a people whisperer. And I'm fully convinced that behind every successful project, there is a team that laughs together at least once a day.
Part of the episode is called Roots and Roads. So tell us how working for big and small companies have shaped your mindset, your skills, especially in leadership.
Well, I had the opportunity to work both in corporate organizations as well as the startups. And it's a classic tale between the corporate behemoth and the caffeinated startup. When you switch between these 2 organizations, now that I reflect back, it's been switching between a cruise ship and a speedboat. The cruise ship, which is your corporate behemoth, it's a steady, well-resourced, structured organization, right? You have a process for everything, including the process to buy a stapler. Things tend to move slower, but there is structure, there is predictability, and enough acronyms across the board that won't be sufficient enough, or that would be more than sufficient enough to fill up a Scrabble board. I remember reflecting back in 2007, 2008, if I'm not wrong, I was working for a Fortune 400 company, and I wanted to bring a project management software in-house. And with the number of approvals that I had to go through and the number of questions I had to answer, like, is it an independent request, or is it going to serve the entire organization? Is it an individual license versus enterprise license? Why can't it be done with any other tools, etc.? The turnaround time to have that software in-house took a bit longer than my daughter's last ringette season. And then there is the startup, which I call the speedboat, right? It's fast, it's scrappy, it's thrilling, and sometimes it's terrifying. You wear 17 hats, the strategy pivots every Tuesday, and then your job title changes between lunch and dinner. But the energy is electric, and I would say the impact is immediate. So now, when after 20 years down the line, having experience in both the extreme sides of it, if I may say so, I have evolved to something what I call structured agility. I'm just thinking that I made this word up. It sounds like an oxymoron, but yes, that's what it works. From corporates, larger organizations, I've learned the value of systems, governance, stakeholder finesse. From startups, I've learned how to move fast, experiment, and embrace a bit of chaos. So now it's more like I feel myself like a jazz conductor. I've got a score, but I've got enough room for improvisation. Because whether you are steering a big ship or riding a jet ski, there's one thing for certain. Leadership is less about control, but more about trust, adaptability, and empowerment.
It's an amazing experience that brings up to the next question. Arindam, you embraced the Agile work in your career. So what got you into Agile, and what's Agile for you in daily life?
I have to go back down memory lane almost 20 years before. Almost, not 20, around 15 to 17 years before. It was around that 2007, 2006 time frame when I was first christened to Agile. And I was managing a large waterfall project. We were doing an electronic funds transfer project in a waterfall model that had more phases than the phase of a moon. We were 3 months in, totally scrambled, still documenting, and there was no light at the end of the tunnel. And in one of the meetings, the stakeholder finally dropped the bomb. Are we ever going to go live? Do we have a date by when we can have this feature available to our customers? And we all thought, well, we haven't even thought about it because we don't even know and we are still scrambling. The director suggested that why don't we try Agile methodology? That was the first time I heard about the term Agile. No one in the organization knew what that is. There was skepticism. It's always the case when you try to bring in new concepts. Eventually, an Agile coach was brought in, and that is where I got introduced to Agile and learned about the Agile ceremonies. I was skeptical. They were talking about something called a daily stand-up, and it was to me like, who wants to talk every day and give accountability as to what you did yesterday, what you are going to do today, and what stopped you from doing, or what your impediments are that you couldn't complete yesterday, right? It was frustrating. But what we figured out within a very short time regarding the feedback loops, the visibility, and actually delivering working value, working software, it was the impact was immediate. Scrum helped the team. We were taught Scrum framework. Scrum helped the team focus, collaborate better, and surface blockers faster. That is where various frameworks were introduced. I learned Scrum, and then there were some discussions about Scrum board, which later I learned it was Kanban. But that time, we all said that it's a Scrum board. So you have visual information radiators. These are your work in progress. These are your backlog, and these are your blockers, and these are the work that have been completed, meeting the definition of done. When you look at that board, you can visualize it's just flowing like a Zen master, right? The bottlenecks, the challenges, impediments, the inefficiency in the system started surfacing up, right? And it just didn't change the way I manage projects. It changed the way how I led people. It made me a better listener, a better collaborator, and definitely a better whiteboard sketcher, right? Now we take the whiteboard and then we go back to the drawing board if something doesn't work. And now fast forward 20, I don't chase perfection anymore. I chase progress. And if something doesn't work, that's okay. We inspect, adapt, and pivot fast. So I think that's the impact Agile had on me in terms of leadership, in terms of delivering projects.
That's a complete explanation. So now that you are talking about these changes and the mindset and the profession, we found a recent article that noted that project management is among the growing roles and career paths increasingly resistant to automation. How do you see this contribution to these project management professionals?
I'm not completely surprised because project management and project managers and project leaders are in high demand. And it's true, the project management is having its moment. In fact, I'd say we have gone from that accidental career path to the essential gear in the machine of modern work, right? Why all of a sudden project management is getting into the spotlight? It's been there for so many years, right? if you look at it in this complex world, right, where everything is cross-functional, multi-everything initiatives, someone needs to be the human duct tape. And that's where project managers come in, right? We are hearing a lot of buzz about AI, that AI is doing this, it's automating stuff, it's taking away human jobs, whatnot. But think about it for a moment, right? Let's be honest. AI might be able to write a poem. And I don't know if you folks have seen this or not. There was this gentleman, Ernesto or something, who sang a wonderful song at America's Got Talent, and he became immensely viral, right? I built a home with bleeding hands. Sorry. Just go and Google it. Immensely popular, soul-touching song. And then when I started hearing that song and started reading more about it, we figured out that is a song that was not even written by anyone. It was AI generated. So AI may be able to write a poem, give a tune to a song, right? Or even write the most optimal code snippet for you. But can it facilitate a stakeholder meeting where 3 of your stakeholders, highly influential stakeholders, want 3 different things and nobody has read the project brief? That's where project managers come in, right? The rise in the PM roles have been driven mostly by change, organizational, economic, technological, right? We call it the pestle analysis, you name it. When change becomes the norm, someone needs to steer the ship while it's still being built. That's where project managers thrive, create clarity in chaos, structure in ambiguity, and a momentum when everybody is stuck asking, well, what are we doing again? Now, with all this, add Agile to the mix. It's like giving rocket fuel to the profession. It brings speed, it brings adaptability, and a relentless focus on delivering value. It just doesn't fit into the modern world. It was made for it, right? It's not about command and control anymore. I keep on saying the same thing. It's about servant leadership. It's about empowering teams. It's about making decisions faster. And Agile keeps the project managers relevant because it shifts us from pushing a plan to delivering a value, right? You are no longer tracking tasks. You are coaching teams. You are facilitating innovation. And you are navigating uncertainty like a pro. You are the bridge between the vision and the velocity.
Wow, I can extract some quotations from that explanation. I would like to ask you if you could please tell us about a high pressure project and how you handle it using all these agile mindset.
Well, you ask a question. Almost every project that I've managed has been like under pressure, right? Project managers, they are one throat to choke. So you'd hardly find any project manager who is relaxed and doesn't care about things and things just flow on its own. If that's the case, then you don't need a project manager. So there are many examples to share, but let me take you back to one of my very interesting and very stressful projects. It's a digital transformation I led for a major insurance firm, right? The objective was to sunset an aging legacy platform and migrate to a new on-prem solution. But here's the catch. You have to get it done in 8 months, right? Why 8 months? Don't ask me. Someone promised senior management and the board of directors that we'll get it done in 8 months. The hammer was on us, right? That get it done in 8 months. So from day one, we had a gun on the head. We were juggling multiple requirements, right? There was legacy data that nobody wanted to touch and a stakeholder matrix that was even more complex than the Game of Thrones family tree. So, the way we try to keep ourselves calm and bring method to the madness and a structure to the chaos is, number one, we cut the chaos. We did ruthless prioritization, right? So what that means is we stopped trying to do everything. We had a brutally honest, what I call it a Moscow session. Many of you may be aware of that. Moscow is must have, should have, could have, and wouldn't have. So we said a polite see you later to everything else that doesn't form a part of the minimum viable product, right? So with this prioritization, it gave us clarity and it gave us some room to breathe. At least we know what we were building. Number two, we adopted the Agile methodology, right? We took the Scrum framework, sprints. Instead of one mega plan, we ran short, sharp sprints. It's the same concept: deliver, test, learn, repeat. We had working components demo ready at the end of every sprint. It wasn't perfect. We didn't expect it to be perfect, but it was visible. The stakeholders could see what we were building. And, any project comes with a cost. And to the people in finance, seeing is believing. So they were seeing the product getting built. Stand-ups. As much of a broken record as it may seem, these were not like regular check-ins. They were like tactical war room huddles. 15 minutes, the blockers, the impediments started surfacing up right from day one, right? Transparency went up. That kind of controlled the panic to an extent. I talked about stakeholders, right? A very complex stakeholder matrix. That was the biggest challenge we had. What we did is we assigned 2 empowered sponsors and a single point of contact for the project. What that did is that eliminated the 27 odd conflicting opinions and replaced them with one unified voice. If no idea how much it helped us in the project, it was magical. It was just like switching from dial-up to fiber, right? And then we had visual information radiators, which was very important, right? Scrum ran the core build, but we used Kanban to manage our integration tasks, the regulatory, the compliance tasks, right? GRC, governance, risk, compliance. So this dual mode of Agile kept the flow smooth and it kept the stakeholders happy. When we started the project in January, we had a line in the sand that we are going to go live this day in October. 8 months is a long way for a complex project. Every single thing you can think of can go wrong, right? Trust me, with this approach, we went live on the very same day that we had decided 8 months before. The platform was stable, the data was clean, stakeholders were more than impressed, and nobody had to fake that they were out of Wi-Fi during the retrospectives, right? What I learned, and I think I'd like to share this to everyone because this is something that can be a takeaway for many of you. In high pressure scenarios, when you are sitting inside the pressure cooker, success isn't about avoiding problems. It's about embracing adaptability, earning trust. And remember, even under pressure, people want to breathe, people want to laugh, right? Yeah, people want to laugh. Agile gave us that structure. Leadership gave us that direction. And, the human touch that project managers, Scrum Masters brought in, that gave us the fuel to finish strong.
You said at the beginning that a project manager is a magician behind the scenes. I would add that it's a magician with great communication skills. So the next question is, how do you keep good communication in changing environments for working like remote or multicultural teams?
Well, I have to go back far more in my career. When I started my career back in 2003, 2004. I started my career back in India, and then after a year or so, I moved to States. I stayed there for 10 years. I was managing multicultural teams across geographies and different time zones, right? So I had a team in India, I had a team in America, and I had a team in Guadalajara, Mexico. Right? So managing a cross-cultural, cross-functional team spanned across geographies, there's a lot to learn there, right? Number one, time zone Tetris. I always call it, right? Respect the time zones. It's the first thing. It is non-negotiable, right? We identified what I used to call it as the golden overlap hour, where all the 3 geographies used to come together. That's one magical slice of time when most of the people are awake, they are functional and not tired or exhausted for the day, right? That's the time we used to make critical decisions regarding the project because you have your key stakeholders that are dispersed. So that thing is very important. Number 2, clarity is king, right? Global teams, various dialects, various languages, ambiguity is your biggest enemy, right? So what I've learned is over communicate, but with empathy. Instead of keeping things postponing, right? Let's meet next Tuesday. I would say that, okay, why don't we meet probably if there's availability tomorrow, and I promise you I'll keep it within 30 minutes so that you can go, right? I promise, and I was very strict about time. So communicate clearly. Number 3, very important, I always say, cultural intelligence and be curious about culture, right? Because every culture is different and there's no end to learning, as I always say. A simple anecdote would be like when you visit various places, you collect those fridge magnets. They become a part of your journey. You keep sticking onto your fridge and it becomes a part of your journey. It's a storytelling, right? It tells you, it gives you a flashback of at what time you visited that place and the memories you have of it. I have picked up cultural nuances the way you pick up or you gather fridge magnets. You don't have to learn the entire culture, but when you start working with people, you keep that eye and ear open. As an example, right? In some culture, silence, it means I've heard what you said, I'm thinking. In other cultures, silence means I've heard what you say and I don't agree, I'm just being polite. You have to read between the lines. If you are not sure, again, go back to number 2, clarity. Ask that gently. Hey, you are quiet. Is that a yes, yes or a maybe yes, right? Ask that question with empathy. Be asynchronous. You don't have to synchronize everything because you are in different time zones. What that means is you don't have to call everyone and every decision needs to be made in a meeting. Leave a Slack message. The other part of the globe, maybe probably it's nighttime, they're sleeping, but in the morning when they wake up, they'll see the message, they'll respond. Leave an email message if you want to, right? So keep the communication flowing. It doesn't need to be synchronous. Asynchronous would be your superpower in this case. And I would say the final one, build connection, not just velocity, right? Remote doesn't mean robotic. We used to do what you call it as the culture corners, right? Team members share something from each of their country. We used to hold this, I think, every month. It's a tradition. You share something about your culture, and we used to have the potlucks where candidates from different countries, resources from different countries, they used to bring a favorite snack, right? And when they line up, I still get those olfactory flashbacks. I mean, I'm getting a bit nostalgic with that, but I miss those days. So in short, multicultural teams, managing them, it's less about managing and more about connecting, right? It's about being a translator, a bridge builder, and sometimes I would say a time zone therapist, right? If you lead with empathy, if you lead with clarity, add a dash of humor, the collaboration will flow, no matter where in the world your team is.
I feel like you just gave us a multiculturalism class, doing an amazing summary with general insights from specific behaviors in cultures. Definitely, this is a skill that in project management, but also I think in all careers, we should have to success. You mentioned different kind of skills that project leaders should focus on today. However, maybe you want to mention a couple more, few more.
Well, project managers are always in demand, right? And that's no surprise. But what I say is, if you're really building up skills, look into the future, right? Tomorrow's project leaders, they won't just be building Gantt charts or writing tasks. You need to build something called a super skill set. Think of less of a clipboard, but more of a Swiss Army knife, right? Few things that I can think of is, say, empathy, right? Yes, really. Again, back to that conversation that we had a few minutes before, right? AI can write a poem for you. It can tune a song for you, but no AI, no robot can read a tense room. If you have a developer who is burning out, AI won't be able to figure that out. If that burnt out developer says, I'm fine, AI won't be able to decode what fine means in that case, right? Great project leaders, they always lead with empathy, because trust, it isn't assigned, it's earned. Number 2, storytelling. When you asked me who am I behind the resume, I said I'm also a storyteller. So forget those dull status reports, right? Create the ability to craft a compelling narrative. Why the project matters, what success looks like, right? How the team is winning, how is it a game changer? Stakeholders will remember stories, not spreadsheets. So what I say is, be the Spielberg of status reports. There's one other important aspect. It's called systems thinking. That's a very important aspect I think project managers or future project managers should start thinking about, right? People, projects, they don't live in silos. In today's world, everything is connected, right? Future leaders will need to see beyond the task list and understand how decisions they make ripple across products, across teams, across customers, and even the company culture. So think strategic, think chess, not checkers. We've been talking about Agile, so definitely have an Agile mindset, not just wrote the Agile frameworks, right? Knowing Scrum is great, but living agility is way better. Can you pivot without panic? Can you adapt and still keep the team motivated? The future will belong to those who treat change like a dance partner, not an interruption, right? And then I always say, be tech savvy, but not tech obsessed, right? You don't need to code like a developer, but you need to speak the language of tech, the language of data and digital tools. So know what AI is. Good. Know what automation is, know what blockchain is, what decentralized finance is, or whatever it is, right? What analytics can and can't do for your team. But that way, you won't be replaced by AI or a robot. Rather, you would be the one who would be leading it, right? Let me put it in a nutshell. Future PMs will be in part a coach, in part a diplomat, and in part a data whisperer. The tools will evolve, the buzzwords will change, but in the heart of leadership, there is communication, there's courage, and the ability to rally people around a common goal. That's timeless.
Well, those are amazing advice for current and new PMs. We need to jump to the next segment, which is giving back. I would like to ask you how working with nonprofits or advisory boards help in your growth, in your career, and in your life.
Well, project management is everywhere, right? I've been involved with nonprofits ever since I started my professional journey, right? And it has been one of the most transformational aspects in my leadership journey as well, right? One of the causes closest to my heart has been mentoring and supporting, be it the emerging project management professionals or even the less fortunate people in the society. I usually don't speak much about those, but since you raised this point, apart from coaching, mentoring, also funded education for quite a few less fortunate people in the society. I've funded their education for their engineering, for their medicals, right? Those folks, when they come back to me, and I think I'll relate to some of the discussions we had before this recording, right? It's always a pleasure to see that one of students is actually taking this podcast interview. Nothing can be more gratifying than that to an instructor. It's the same thing here. Students whom I helped complete their education, now they're established, and when they come back and say, "Sir, I look upon you," it's not just giving back, right? It's also about growing forward. I also tell them the same story. Pay it forward, grow forward. If I could have helped you, there are more needy people. Why don't you sponsor education for somebody else? Now, coming to the corporate world, we often lead with metrics, right? We deal with timelines, budgets, ROIs, KPIs, whatnot. But if it's a non-profit organization, charity, you lead with a meaning. You are not driving delivery for a client, but you are nurturing the impact for a community. That's very purpose-driven leadership, right? And that reminds you why you got into this work at the first place. What I would say is that serving on the advisory boards, I've had the privilege of shaping strategy with diverse thinkers. I worked with educators, I worked with technology enthusiasts, and I worked with grassroots leaders. When I get into the room for discussion, trust me, those rooms are very humbling. You quickly realize the influence isn't about hierarchy. It's about how well you can listen, how clearly you communicate, and more importantly, how sincerely you are connected to the cause. I always say during mentoring, my job isn't to give you a ladder. It's to show you how to build your own, right? And the best part, I learn just as much from them as they learn from me. The curiosity keeps me sharp, their ideas challenge me, and their energy, let's say, it's very contagious. And that's what keeps me going.
Well, thank you so much for that generosity or spread those words. And when I did the research for this episode, I didn't find some information about how you are interested in giving back, but always is glad to hear that you are supporting other organizations. If you didn't that before, thank you for sharing it in this episode. Well, unfortunately, we have to close right now. So the last question is if you have tips, advice, or final words to new project managers or new enthusiastic people that are listening to this podcast today.
What I would say is if you are planning to become a project manager or envisioning to become a leader, don't look at in silo, right? It's like be a part compass, part energy bar, and a part Wi-Fi booster. That's what I say. Few things I would say, my humble words of advice, if I want to put it that way. Don't fall in love with the framework. Fall in love with the problem. Right? Agile, Scrum, Safe, blockchain, AI, name anything. These are tools. These are not belief systems, right? Don't become the person who treats a hammer like it's the answer to every nail. Ask the question, what problem are we solving? Who are we solving it for, right? There may not be any one single right approach. So creatively blend a few approaches that works for you. Number 2 is stay curious, not just certified. Certifications are great. I myself have a bunch of certifications. They open the doors, right? But curiosity is what keeps those doors open. When you are driving into something like artificial intelligence or blockchain, don't just memorize how it works. Ask the question, why is it useful? Where it fits? What's the problem it's gonna solve or it doesn't solve, right? The technology would evolve. but your habit of asking questions, curiosity, learning, that's your real superpower. Read, tinker, join communities, engage in interesting discussions, community conversations, right? And don't hesitate to ask that dumb question. Chances are your senior man, your senior architect might still be wondering about the same thing. And I'll say one final word: build human skills, right? You can master all frameworks, agile methodologies, Scrum framework, blockchain logic, but if you can't communicate clearly, if you can't lead with empathy, if you can't rally a team through a tough sprint, your project will crumble quicker than a pack of cards, right? The most successful PMs I know and who I personally look forward to, they are part coach, part diplomat, and part stand-up comedian, right? So to every new project manager or a leader out there, my advice is embrace the tech, respect the craft, and never forget the future may be digital, but leadership is always human.
Thank you so much again for being here today. To our audience, thank you so much for listening the Keep It Real podcast. See you.